This is the Note Closers Show, where you get the latest developments in distressed note investing and learn the secrets of how you can control millions of dollars worth of property for pennies on the dollar. Get educated and entertained by someone who has closed thousands of deals and lives to support you in achieving the same. Now, here's your host, CEO of We Close Notes, Scott Carson.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the Note Closers Show. I am your exuberant host, Scott Carson, CEO of WeCloseNotes.com, and I am excited to have you here for this episode, whether you're watching live on our Facebook live stream or you're listening to it on iTunes, Stitcher, or any other podcast platforms that you can listen and download this episode. But we have a couple very special guests today, a couple good friends that are absolutely helping us in ways we never thought possible. And one of the great things that I am a big advocate of is not being the smartest person in the room. If you can be the dumbest person in the room, it's always a good thing. These people make me feel very dumb when it comes to one of our biggest marketing pieces, and I love that because I soak up so much freaking knowledge from them. I try to do Vulcan mind melds, but these guys have helped us out tremendously in 2017, even though we've only been working with them for just roughly about 4.5 months. And I'm excited to have Tom and Tracy Hazzard from Brandcasting You, and they're the hosts of Feed Your Brand podcast. So good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Good morning. It's great to be here.
Always good to have you guys. So first of all, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Festivus, Happy Kwanzaa.
All of the above.
All of the above, exactly. And so, but you guys, thank you. For those that don't know, Tom and Tracy Hazzard, they help us with our podcast. Nicole does a great job of producing it here in the studio, get everything uploaded. And then these guys and their staff kind of run with it and really kind of add some steroids to it afterwards. So you guys are really great in podcasting for a while, and that's what you're really here to talk about today, though, right?
Yeah, we've been doing it since April 2015, right? Isn't that when we started?
Yeah.
And we've done 500 episodes of our first podcast.
But
a little different from the episode 500 versus episode 1, huh?
Yeah.
It's quite different.
It's very different,
It's different. But now we're doing 3 different podcasts for different parts of our business. And, of course, the most relevant one to this conversation is called Feed Your Brand.
Cool. So let's talk a little about that. What is Feed Your Brand?
So Feed Your Brand is really a podcast for podcasters or aspiring podcasters, anyone who's really looking to create that sort of authority platform. And we really want to take it away from how to podcast because we don't care. We don't care how you podcast, just start doing it. That's not the important part. The important part is what you do with it after. And there's nothing I hate more than wasting time. And so I love what you're doing here because you're on Facebook now. You're going to repurpose it. Why waste all that great content and only do one thing with it? Let's do everything we can with it and reuse it. That way, people get it in whatever way they want to receive it. And that's what Feed Your Brand is all about, is kind of exposing all the different ways that you might be repurposing your content and using it. That's
a good point, because I hate doing marketing that works for just one thing.
Yes.
I
don't have time for that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the staff can vouch here. We walk in, somebody closed on 50 deals. Let's do an infographic. Let's have them on the podcast. Let's throw it on YouTube and Vimeo and then throw it on iTunes with you guys and then throw it on Instagram. And I think a lot of people struggle with that because I think it comes down initially. It's like the nuts and bolts of stuff. They get so worried about what do I do to begin this journey versus or what am I going to say? And then why don't you guys talk about that a little bit?
Well, and it's not just what they're going to say, but what they're going to do with it after, because if you don't have a point to why you're doing it, that's really the thing. And we talk about that all the time.
Yeah, we find the most common issue with people is just getting started, getting over that inertia of, but is that the first thing I should do? Or do I need to do this? Or do I have to have this done first? And the reality is you need to create content in order to market your business, to grow your business, to get more exposure, to reach more people. And you just have to start doing it. And whether that's recording a live stream video or recording an audio program, it doesn't matter. Any of those things can be multicast into many different formats, even a written format, which is really a critical part of the process, so that it continues to work for you. And you really multiply the work you're doing without doing any more work. That's the idea.
Yeah,
I could totally. I talked to quite a few people that have started podcasts just to kind of see, hey, how are we doing? What are you seeing? Trying to figure out traffic and stuff like that. And when I tell them that we've done almost 60 episodes on just a podcast, but we've had 150 videos on Facebook Lives that we're kind of a launch for, They're like, you're the exception to the rule. You're the outlier when it comes to everything, which is okay. I don't mind being an outlier, but we're having a lot of traffic off it. But I think a lot of people that I've talked to that want to start a podcast, like, I don't want to make this a lot of work and have to do it on it. And it's not so much, right?
I'm the opposite. See, I didn't want to do video. Like whenever I give the speech on stage about brandcasting, that's exactly what I said. I was like, yeah, for me, video seemed like so much more work because you kind of got to set it up. You got to get it started. It's harder to edit.
No, let's be honest. It's the girl.
I had to have my hair done.
Doesn't want to have the camera with her hair perfect.
That's right. I didn't want to have my hair done. And we wanted to just pick up and do it whenever and not have that matter. And for us, just podcasting really worked for us because we're co-hosts. So we have this banter thing going on and it's the way we are. And so it felt really natural. And then to be able to do that and not worry about when we did that, when we recorded, it made it easier for us to keep going and do all the episodes. So.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you think people that are starting a podcast are going to see a lot of immediate results, or is it more of a kind of plant the seed in the ground and watch it grow?
It really, as long as you're committed to putting out a consistent amount of content, let's say weekly at minimum, okay? You've got to do a minimum of once a week. But we do highly recommend, especially in the beginning of a show, front loading it. Do as many episodes in the first 60 days as you can justify the time. Now, let's talk about the time for a sec, because, that's everybody's biggest concern, like you said, right? Oh, I don't know if I have the time. Can I commit the time? Well, if you try to do everything yourself, you'll get buried in it, and it'll be a full-time endeavor that'll do nothing for you. If you actually get help, get the support you need, so that all you do is record the content, which is really the thing that no one can do for you.
Right.
Record the original content, upload it, and then you're done. Leave it to others to do it. Then you can absolutely do a lot of content.
Or you can do and get a Nicole like you and have her upload it too. So then you don't even do that.
Yes.
So smart.
One of the things that when Tom and I were sitting there talking about the different ways to record, and we were already using Zoom for our Monday night webinars and our Facebook Lives. And then the minute you told me, because that was the thing we were talking on at Laughlin and Events event,
right,
6 months ago, I guess it was, on the boat, you said, oh, you can use Zoom. You can use it and upload. I was like, what? I don't have to go buy a casting thing and all this billboard or whatever,
They make it way too complicated. It's really not.
As long as you're already recording the content, and quite honestly, because you're doing your recording, you're just speaking into a mic that's a little bit distant away from you and in your environment, the recording sound is not quite the same as others that might be just doing an audio show.
Or in a studio.
Have a little more background noise or something. So what? I mean, the content is good. The information is there. People can understand it. So if you're already doing video and you're comfortable with that, we strip audio from videos for clients all the time and produce them a podcast. And again, just gives them a whole lot more exposure for what they're already doing.
Yeah, I think that we get really caught up in the idea of getting started. And so this is a real big issue, I think, a lot for your note closers. So they're new. They haven't established themselves in this marketplace yet. No one knows them yet. So you have to build this minimum level of credibility. And I want to call it instant authority, but I hate that word because it sounds like it just happens like that, which it doesn't. But if you build the framework for that to occur, it does. So when we started, our very first podcast was 3D printing. And if you don't know what 3D printing is, it's literally like printing plastic objects. And so it's pretty geeky. And we didn't know if there would be an audience. We didn't know if it was going to be a business for us. We had no idea what we were going to do with it. We just knew a podcast seemed like the best way for us to get to explore it and test it out and see if there was a market. And so that's exactly why we went into it. We didn't have any business purpose beyond exploration.
Well, what ended up happening, though, is we ended up building ourselves up as an authority in the space. We became an expert in the space.
By asking questions. That was it. It was crazy. But what really happened was we had done the smart thing, which was we didn't just record it. We put it into blog posts. We did video accompaniments to it. And we invited guests. And so we invited guests who provided this high-value connection and, by association, a level of authority we didn't have before that. And so now, 500 episodes later, we're inarguably the authority. And it's crazy because we didn't start out at the early adopters in the industry. And so you can do that, and it doesn't have to take 2.5 years and 500 episodes. We think it's somewhere, the tipping point is somewhere between 50 and 100 episodes for most shows. And so if you do, and you probably have stuff you don't even know you have back in your archives. So we were just talking to Jay Abraham. I was interviewing for Inc., and we decided to record it because it was a lot of fun. So that'll air in the first of the year. He's such a cool guy. And he was talking about this entire legacy of videos and interviews and things that he has that he's just got. And they're Some of them are on his website and video and they're free and you can check them out, but they're not blogged yet. Like there's so much gold there that needs to get out so that if someone's searching on the internet, they can find you. They can check on you. Your note closers, they can check them out and go, wow, they really do exist. They've made 40 posts in the last 30 days. Amazing, or something like that. So it's just a matter of that, of being there all the time is mostly what people are looking for.
And I think, Tom, were you going to say something?
Well, I was just going to, your original question about what can people expect, right, from how soon can they see results? And there are different measurements of success depending on the type of business you are. I can give you a couple of examples. So we had a customer who started about the same time you did in August of 2017, who's a chiropractor in New Jersey. And he started his podcast, does just one show a week, right? Now, you do a lot more content than that, but his measure of success is this. His podcast has already elevated him, even though he's a brand new chiropractor. I mean, he's a young kid. He's still, maybe he's in his early 30s.
He just started
his own practice in New Jersey. And it's elevated him to an authority level. He's gotten a dozen new patients directly because of the podcast. And the lifetime value of those patients is worth so much to him. And, of course, the referrals they bring in. But the other thing is chiropractic care, a lot of people are skeptical of, is it really going to help them? Is it the right kind of chiropractic or the right kind of care they need? Any customer that's on the fence, he says, you know what, just go listen to a few episodes of my podcast and see how you feel. Then he says it always closes them after they listen to that. So that's one measure of success, that it doesn't matter how many plays your podcast has, how many actual subscriptions you have. It doesn't matter. He's a local business, which is kind of strange because podcasting is a worldwide distribution platform, and he has people writing into him from all over the world. But locally in New Jersey, it's built up his business. And of course, you've had great success with people investing in notes with you and all sorts of other opportunities. And you've got so many plays. I understand. Hopefully, you might be monetizing some of that soon with advertisers, maybe. Or am I letting the cat out of the bag? I shouldn't have said that. But
no, we actually got a contract going over for our first sponsor. We've had several people that are figuring out numbers for next year, stuff like that. But they've already seen, some of our previous guests have already seen an influx from the podcast. So it's our speakers, it's our guests. Anybody that's on here that listens, don't get me wrong, note investing is a small niche inside of real estate investing. Definitely a smaller niche than the $500,000 fix and flippers out there. We're the 5, maybe 10,000 true note investors. But that's the thing is we've seen that. We've had people call us up, say, hey, I want to invest with you, which is always nice. We had our largest class of the year just recently, this last weekend. And I think a chunk of that has to do with the podcast, people hearing it, finding iTunes or Stitcher, or coming across our website through the blog posts that you guys do. Why don't we talk a little about that, Tom?
Yeah, because that's really the big hidden, or I guess not so obvious benefit.
The opportunity gap.
It is the opportunity gap. You're 100% right.
Yeah, speaking of Jay Abraham from the other day, we were talking about it. It's the opportunity gap is that Google is getting millions and millions of searches every single day, and it's looking for new stuff all the time. It's like we're in this daily news cycle, hourly news cycle, right? They don't want the same old stuff to come up. They want new stuff to provide them. And so when they see new stuff from a trusted source, and that's where you have to build that up over, we say that kind of minimum is 40 to 50 posts. Once you get 40 to 50 posts in, it tends to start to get trust from Google. And that'll be, depending on your speed of doing that, is how fast Google starts to rank you or give you authority. And what we see happen, though, is that when it hits that point, Google says, I don't know what this stuff means. Something about note closing. Like, I don't get this. This is a term I never heard before. But this guy talks about it all the time. We got to give this to him. It happened to us with our crazy 3D printing because there's new words all the time. There's new phrases that come up that people didn't even know about. And one of the big terms we got ranked really highly on was, and we weren't even really talking about it, but cloud computing was coming big. So we got ranked high because we'd been talking about a lot of the software was cloud CAD computing. And so Google was giving us terms that we hadn't even spoken about just because they didn't know where else to put it.
Yeah. And, here's the thing people don't realize is that while you are very well known in your industry, there are people out there. And this is not just you, Scott. The audience too. You're very well known in your industry, perhaps, and you're in a niche field. And if people know they're looking for you and they go search in Google, they'll find your website. If they know they're looking for note investing, maybe they'll find you. Or if a chiropractor, people know they want chiropractic, they'll find you. But the key to Google, and 80% of ours, and most people's web traffic we find comes from Google, not even iTunes or YouTube or any of these places. And it's because people are searching in Google's search bar every day for their pain points or what their challenges are and what they're looking for. So that's why we have to convert this audio content or this video content into written blog posts, because Google doesn't index what people say in a video. Google doesn't index what people say in an audio show and a podcast. They index written words and blog posts. And if you do that, Google really does the work. You put the post on your site, they cross-reference every different keyword phrase in your posts, and you will start to rank on thousands of organic keywords in Google search. And that's how people will find you that didn't even know you existed.
Well, I imagine this happens to you all the time, Scott, because they don't note closing, like it's not the most obvious. They maybe want to do some type of real estate investing or do some kind of thing, but they never heard of it before. So it's not something they're going to type those words into Google, but they might be typing in different types of REI investments or different things like that. Because you talk about that in relationship to no closing, it would come up and they'd be like, I'm really curious. I got to know about this. And that's how they find you.
Yeah, we do get a chunk of that. The keywords are, and that's the thing when we upload to YouTube or Vimeo, making sure the keywords are a part of that too. Because if we don't have a keyword, it's not really up there. But using that, and again, actually, one of the things that we've started to doing, we'll be doing more of is as you guys upload the blogs, we'll be taking a chunk of that and going back and putting that in the description of the videos.
Good, yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
To help drive that SEO optimization going forward.
Especially that first paragraph, because we have now, I don't know if you realize this, if we told you, but since you started working with us, we expanded our team and have a full-time copywriter who is writing those first paragraphs that are really the sort of summary. And
we call them leading paragraphs, right?
Yep.
Loading it with the keywords and making it be something that's going to stop you as you're scrolling through and reading a podcast or a video description. So definitely that leading paragraph.
So it doesn't give everything away about your episode. It gets them enough enticed to say, wow, there's something here I'd like to know more. And it's well written and it packs your keywords in even though you don't even know it. And that's how that's how good journalism works. And that's where we come from. We come from that background of wanting to be good broadcasters, good journalists, and having all of those things combined in our marketing efforts. And so that's where the way we've developed this sort of system that we use, it comes from your viewpoint as what do I want to get out of it? Not, oh, this is how we edit podcasts. Like it doesn't come from the production side of things.
So, Tracy, one of the things that we talked about last week when we were talking about having you guys on is adding the credibility side and building some of those nuggets. So 0 to 60 episodes, that seems like a lot of work. What are some of the basic things that people do as far as maybe outlining their first dozen, first 10 to kind of prime that pump to get things rock and rolling?
Well, the first thing we do is we sit down and we draft out 25 of the influencers in our industry. So like who would be our ideal guest? Who should we ask to be on our show? Who do we know? Who's going to give us credibility by association in our topic, whatever that core topic might be? And so we don't just want those people who are like, I call them career podcast guests, where they shop from show to show to show and they've been on every top podcast. Like you don't need those people. You need somebody who's going to change my mind about real estate investing or change my mind about product design, whatever your podcast is about. You want someone who's going to really bring you that credibility in the early days. In the later days, there's really good reasons to have other people on, like just expanded ideas and things like that. But this is really where you want to start with, because that association with them, they have credibility in your industry. And that connection is what we call a high value backlink, a connection between you and them, not just literally because we're talking to each other, but it actually happens under the structure of your website. It's connected your website to their website. And that's really important. So that's the first thing. So if we do 25 of those, then we do 25 of the most common questions, problems, things we repeat every single time. And we want to keep it really narrow and small. So the way we started it, which was a little easier for us, was we posed a question like, how do you do this? What would I use to accomplish that? Like you just sort of ask yourself, what would an audience member ask? And so in the early days, we actually did it that way. We would make up questions and then we'd go, oh, and Liam from New Jersey asked us this. And like we just make up friends around the country who asked us these questions.
I actually used a bunch of like my old high school college, but
we're like, by the way, we mentioned you on the podcast. Say yes, you said that.
So that is an old trick on webinar sales for speakers. If there's no questions, they've got 10 questions and friends' names. Oh, Boyd in Austin said this. I have used my buddy Boyd quite a bit.
Yeah, but I mean, you could do that, but you don't even have to word it that way. At the end of the day, it doesn't have to be a question, right? It's the topic. But if you were thinking about like writing a book, this is the way you would maybe write a book, right? You might use a case study, not just a guest, right? Which is okay too. And so when you kind of do those things and you think about planting that as a topic, a guest, or a case study, and you think about planning that out, it makes a great book. But then you want to mix it up so that it's not in like linear order, because that's not the way people consume. They consume from one exciting thing to another. We think about like record albums, right? When we used to have a whole album, and I'm really dating how old I am right now, but record albums, yeah, not CDs, but albums, that they used to have them in like, you go like rock song, ballad. And you got to give that kind of up and down to get people a chance to absorb the information that you've given them. So thinking about like what makes most exciting guests and pacing them out and not packing them in it all at once. And, and just sort of thinking about mixing up that order. Or what we do is we just have an ongoing list all the time. And we always, like, whenever we think of something, I text myself and then I add it to the list when I'm in the office, or text your assistant, and you can do that too. And whenever we like, oh, something came up, like it happened, we heard about these people who are pod fasters, people who binge listen to podcasts, and they specifically look for podcasts that have 100 episodes or more. And then they'll listen to the entire library, which boosts your statistics tremendously. And they listen at double speed minimum.
At least,
sometimes
yeah. 3 or 4 times speed.
And so we were like, whoa, that's crazy. But it was something worth talking about. And so we inserted an episode about that. And so something comes up and we're just like, we got to talk about that now, because otherwise we're just going to debate it offline. Why not do it on air?
Right. And that's sometimes good, having a little bit of controversy or debate on a topic. Very good. Anytime you get to piss people off or really hit a lot home.
We do that. Yeah. That's the kind of nice.
We don't always agree, and the audience appreciates those opinions. And sometimes we do go over some controversial topics. And let's take the 3D printing podcast as an example for a second. They had the Route 91 situation in Las Vegas with the shooter there, and so many people that died. Actually, Tracy's sister was at that concert, but
it was very personal for me. So.
She got physically injured, safe, thank goodness. But with this whole thing about bump stocks, we did some research, and there was a bunch of 3D printable bump stocks that were out there. And we decided, let's have a discussion about that. Not pro or con Second Amendment, but just a discussion about the availability of these things. And
are they safe? Is it a good idea? And our opinion has always been, as product designers, and that's what we always pull through, is what our viewpoint is. And our viewpoint as product designers is that we have a responsibility to make sure that no one is hurt from any products that they buy from us or they use from us. And that we practice this everywhere. Consumer product safety is important. And so thinking about that is like, if harm is done because of your design. And so that's the approach we took. Got a lot of play, got a lot of different comments from different people. You could tell the ones who actually listened and the ones who didn't. But that happens. But it's important. If it's important to you, your audience wants to know it. They want to feel that it's authentically you, and they want to know who you are and what you do and why it's important to you. So, yeah.
That controversial episode ended up being an incredibly popular one. It had more comments than anything in recent months, good or bad. But so those controversial topics, if you have some and you're willing to take them on, you're going to get a lot more exposure quickly if you go after something like that.
Like, we're the nicest interviewers ever. Like, that's like our personality, right?
If we're nice people. So ourselves.
We're nice people. Like, we're always polite. We're always like, we'll edit that out later, or something like that. We might say that to ourselves. We'll be like, yeah, let's edit that out. That was really boring. But we never say that to an interview subject. That's the pleasure of being able to just go through it and being able to edit. But we are critical in our post discussion, and we allow that. That's what we do, is we have a post discussion. Wow, we brought these people on because we expected to get this out. We didn't. What is that about? And so that, by framing it, you're bringing more context to your guest. And I think that that's really important to do. Why am I here, and why should your audience care?
Well, and that brings up an interesting point, is that keeping in mind, if you're doing video and you're live streaming it right now, whatever happens, happens. It's out there, right? And there's a genuineness to that, and I think a popularity factor to doing it live. But a lot of people maybe are nervous about just starting and doing a live cast show, right? And that's the thing with podcasting, you don't necessarily have to do that. You record it offline, you can flub, or you can say a whole bunch of times, and guess what? They're going to be cut out, and you will sound fantastic, even if you're a newbie. So that's one of the
our first
advantages of
episodes were
audio.
really bad.
Yeah. We got better over time. Everybody gets better with a little practice, but starting out, live stream may not be your cup of tea the first time. Some people are very comfortable. Like if you were acted on stage ever, or you've spoken a lot from stage, maybe it's great for you. But there are options is the point. And if you've got a point of view and something unique to say, then you should be putting it out there. And there's many ways, many choices for how to do it.
Yeah.
Tracy, now Scott was asking before something about, I think we were talking about guest strategies.
Yeah,
we're talking about guests and guest strategies. And I was going to say, ask Tracy to share because she has some ninja tactics.
Yes, that's what we want to get to is the ninja.
Awesome.
We want you to slice and dice with a razor blade.
Share it. How do you get people to share it? And
I know.
This is so
I have to get back to doing more. So I did a webinar with our top 5 ones. But the guest strategies really matter. And so that's the most critically important one because you're creating an authority connection. But also, this is the one that I think is most overlooked. I don't think you need to bring on a popular guest. Like, you don't need somebody who has name recognition necessarily, especially if you're selling coaching or some kind of course program or any of those things. Because one of the things is like, I could sit back and take your class or listen to you give the talk pre-class, right, your webinar, and go, wow, he sounds really knowledgeable, but I don't know, can I do this? He's like been doing this a long time. And so you get this kind of hesitancy of like, is this a fit for me? So sometimes bringing on those case studies or those former clients who've achieved those goals, who've made it, who've walked just a few feet in front of me, makes it easier for me to see the path that would make me go, I'm going to sign up and I'm going to do this. And so when you have that kind of coaching program or a long tail sales process because it's complicated or high end, that's definitely a time to bring people who are a little bit closer from that expertise, closer to the audience level.
And I think sharing your failures and struggles is a good thing too. That way people don't always believe it's such a, you're shooting rainbows and unicorns out of your ass. You're actually sharing the struggles. And I think we all learn more from the struggles. And we look at also our activity on our episodes, and it always, case studies do well. Starting over, I think, is our number one download right to this point, but also the case studies and stuff like that. Especially if you look at the top 10 since our inception, that's really where it kind of falls into, which is different because I brought on some guests that are kind of well known in the industry. And I've also brought on an ex-NFL football player who's a real estate investor. And those episodes didn't do near as I thought they would. I mean, they did okay, but they didn't do near as well as I thought they would.
We've experienced some of that too. We had someone on who was in a related industry who had literally 750,000 followers on Facebook. And we thought, this is going to be
big.
Great.
Yeah.
Let's interview this person. She'll push it out to her audience and we're going to get huge download numbers.
And she had a big YouTube channel too.
And we did the episode. It was great, but average amount of exposure, average amount of downloads. And that kind of became sort of the necessity. Trying to figure out how we can improve that was the mother of the invention of something else that we came up with regarding guests.
Right, which is, the whole important thing with guest stars is that you have to also have a follow-up process, right? Process by which you solicited them, but they're taking time away from their schedule. I mean, we don't pay guests. I don't recommend it to anyone. And one of those things where you have to provide them a value back. And so how can you provide them the best value back? And so we do 3 things. The number one thing, make sure that we introduce them in a really complimentary way, or we do it in post where we say, I just learned this most amazing thing, and we talk about how they were an expert at something or something they taught me. And when we do that, we call it ego bait. And I'm just like putting it out there that that's the name we call it, which sounds awful, but at the same time, it is what it is. Because don't we all like it when people say something really rave review about us, right? It's kind of nice.
Or says something that make us look
really
good,
right? And so it's better than us putting out another ad or another post about us ourselves. Somebody else said this about us. And so it's really easy for us to push that out on social media. But more importantly, we add the twist to it, which is we create a powered backlink and we create code, like literal code, for them to send their web developer and say, put this in your press page or on your blog page or whatever you want to put it anywhere on your website. When they put it, it links back to your site in a really powerful way because it's on a sub page. Because if you gave somebody that and they decided to put, I do it all the time with my Inc. articles, and that's how this started. People will put the Inc. logo, they might put the headline of the article, and they just link to Inc.com instead of to the article. And I was like, I don't understand why they keep doing that. And it's because the URL is too long and it's complicated for them and they can't figure out how to do it. And so I created this code that they just drop in and it's super easy and they can't mess it up. And now you have superpower backlinks to all your subpages.
I also want to be clear, part of this is also a unique graphic that we make for every episode with that quote, with the headshot of the guest, but it's also branded for our show or your show so that it's associating them all, makes it easy for them to share and makes them want to do it. We used to say, hey, please, can you please share this?
And they didn't. They didn't even tell people they were on the show.
And it's like you're asking them for a favor, and it doesn't always happen. But when it's about them, now they're motivated to share it, say, hey, look at me. And then it also serves us. So that we've seen tremendous benefits from that in recent months.
And it's a good strategy for you, Scott, with your partners, because you have partners that you need to provide residual value for. So it gives you an opportunity to like talk about them again at various points across the year of podcasting or a year of videos. It gives you a chance to do that. And so it is like giving back and in small ways, testimonials for them and ads for them, but you're doing it within the context of the show and within the context of a topic that might interest someone.
That makes good sense. That's definitely a great idea for different things. And that's for everybody out there as well, too. I mean, that's one of the things that we like to do is like, hey, here's your show. It's available. And here's a special infographic we created for you, for the show. And Nicole does a great job of that. Because not everybody is going to take the time. Not everybody's that creative. They agree to that. Some people are in the dark ages when it comes to marketing, which is okay. You just got to share it. Sometimes you say, hey, here's something that you can post on your webpage or your link regarding you and using a bit link or something simple to get a link back to them. Yeah, that's a great, great tip. What else? What other ninja tactics do you have there?
So you got to have some media, right? You got to have some articles written about you, about your company, because theoretically, journalists should be researching and checking on you. There should be this like higher value truth in media. Now, it doesn't
talking
really...
about fake news?
Yeah.
So like maybe writing a press release every once in a while?
So we have quit press releases over the last 5 years that they don't work. And I'm a journalist. So I write for Inc. I have a column, which is different than a contributing columnist, a contributing writer. So the difference is a columnist is paid to write the publication and a contributing writer typically writes for themselves and their clients. And so you have to align yourself with a contributing writer or their company. So you can pay their company to do PR for you, and then they'll put writers on it and they'll write an article about you. That can happen. Do favors, put someone on your show, put someone on your stage, and then in exchange, they write an article about you. That happens all the time, kind of a quid pro quo style. I'm different. I expect a pitch. And I write in a very specific section of the Inc. I write in innovation and product design. So really specific. But someone would have to pitch me and tell me why they should be in my article. They need to have read my article. They need to know kind of what my angle is. They know that I write a lot of listicles where I write bullet points or numbered steps. Inc. They need to know the Inc. audience is aspiring $1 million. So you got to do some research. Like that's really have to, because otherwise it's not going to be relevant to you anyway. It's just a logo on your site that doesn't mean anything. Because if somebody clicks that and goes to the article and they read it and they go, wow, that is really interesting. So I personally take my articles really seriously. I write 6 a month only because if I wrote more, I couldn't possibly fit it into my day job. Like it's hard enough to fit 6 in. But I require an interview for every single one and a conversation. And then out of that conversation, I develop my article completely independently. And it usually has my angle to it, what I think my readers are interested in. And I have an editorial board. They review it. And so they might edit it or take it. They might take it down. I've only had one article rejected in all of the 144 I've written. So
nice.
Yeah, but it's not that hard. It is not that hard to find those writers that are compatible with you. They're probably the writers you're like bookmarking all the time and saving their articles. And maybe they write for TechCo or Digital Marketer, or they write all over the place. They're always looking for articles. Like, I mean, we get emails from the whole Inc. Can you write some extra articles? We have nothing this week because everybody waits till the last week of the month. So that's also another tip is that if you want to get written up about it and you have something quick, that's a quick hit, maybe something that's kind of pre-outlined, that the last week of the month, those that have quotas are desperate to get their articles done. And if you kind of gift wrapped it for them, they'd be like, oh, great. And then you'd find yourself it. And so some people do that. Like that happened to us where we ended up appearing in Forbes on October 31st because she had to get her quota in for the month. And all she did was she sent us a questionnaire and we answered it. And they just posted the whole questionnaire. It wasn't even like they wrote a new leading paragraph and wrote the rest of the questionnaire. We took our words exactly. Like it was like we wrote our own article.
The writer had us do all the work, essentially.
Put their name on it, though.
Exactly.
Yeah, they put their name on it. But seriously, if you're trying to get exposure in PR, the more that you do to make it easy for them, the better chances that you're going to have of getting placed in a popular publication. And as Tracy said, timing toward the end of the month, your chances of getting in are better than maybe early in the month when they have a clean slate.
Right.
So
I write for a different reason. So I write to build relationships and build my network. So I write to get speaking engagements. The people are always like, oh, it's so hard to get speaking engagements. I had to hire an agent. I had to do this. I was like, I spoke straight for the entire month of August, September, October, then collapsed for the month of November because I had spoke so many weeks in a row, all because I interviewed someone. They said, well, come on my event, come to my event, come do this. And so there's a lot of networking things to do. That's going to happen to you as a podcast host guest situation. They're going to ask you the same thing. You're building a relationship.
That's a huge thing I think a lot of people don't realize. A lot of times the more you put it out, facing out versus facing in, the better it is you can help with stuff. And I've used that trick of basically having stuff written up and then just dropping an email out the last week of the month. Hey, if you're looking for any articles, looking for any real estate information, I would love to be your guy. It's gotten me in Investors Business Daily, the Wall Street Journal, Inc., Entrepreneur Magazine, some other things like that as well over the last few years.
And if you want to be a contributing writer, it's not that hard. There are a lot of them who are looking for things in specialties. I mean, they look for people who might want to write more than once, write a couple of times a month, so you might need to be prepared for that. But I've even just submitted articles to various places and had them accepted. Sometimes you have to wait a couple of weeks, and that's the hard part. It's like you're anxious. It's so definitely not something timely. You're going to put it out, wait a few weeks, and if you get no response, actually write an email of withdrawal in case it was in process, and then submit to the next place and do that.
Oh, you wouldn't take the same article and submit it to 12 different places?
No, it would hurt you more. You don't want to do that. Yeah.
Okay.
You got to go out to one of them.
It's like plagiarism. So,
that would make sense.
Yeah. And so this is a thing that we find a lot happens is that people do that, is that they put the information on multiple sites, and Google actually downgrades both sites if that happens.
Yeah, if you have duplicate content, more than one site, that's a big no-no in terms of Google. You can have a feed of your articles and blogs, and you can create as many feeds as you need. If you have a special feed that's just for a couple of blog posts, you can have a feed be on as many different sites as you want. But when someone clicks on that feed item, they're going to jump over to, and hopefully in a new tab or window, if it's done right, to the original site where that content's located. Definitely don't put your content on more than one site. And someone can
summarize, or as long as they're not taking more than 10% of your content. So you can do your own spin article. So a long blog post from like this interview will be 6,000 to 10,000 words, but you could do a 600-word version of it and not tread over and worry about an overlap. And that's not a problem. And so sometimes we do that, is I'll write a spin article for Inc. from a podcast interview we did somewhere else. And it just works really great. And I reference back to the original podcast.
Now, question for you guys. There's people that are getting into podcasts and then dropping off the face of the earth.
Yeah.
What would you say the success rate? I won't say the success rate of them continuing to go through it and fall through it. Is it what you guys think?
The last statistics we heard was basically about 23% of the people continue past 25 episodes.
Wow.
And so
that hasn't been our experience.
That hasn't been ours
with our clients, but industry wide. And I think it's especially with a lot of people that try to do everything themselves. Yeah. That's where it starts to break down. You need support. You need systems. You need tactics that are going to make it easy for you to concentrate on the real important part, your unique voice, your point of view, whatever it is you have to share. Then really, you've got to get the support. Don't think you're going to do it all yourselves on a budget. Whatever money you spend will come back to you 10x if you do it right. So that's where I find that people, especially with either when it comes to guest getting or just managing your time to do it right. I'll tell you something. We record now, 30 some odd episodes
36.
a month, 36 episodes a month. But you know how much time we spend doing that ourselves? Talking about 2 days, 3 days tops of total time.
Like this month, we're doing I think there's 6 days because we're stocking up like you are.
Yeah, for
time off and for a lot of travel. But typically it's 3 days maximum a month that we even allocate and open up on our calendar. So no one can even book on any other days but those 3.
But if you have one podcast, depending on how much content you're creating a month, you could do it in 1 day a month. And if you are disciplined and plan it out that way, that I'm turning off my cell phone, I am going to just record my episodes or conduct my interviews on that 1 day, and you've planned ahead and scheduled all your guests in that day. Like, let's say you're going to do 2 a week. That's pretty typical for clients of ours. You're going to do 4 episodes. That's you talking on a topic as a monologue and 4 interviews. And you can definitely accomplish that in 1 day a month. Absolutely. Then that's it. And guess what? If you really need it to be, it could probably even be a Saturday. just depends on your guest and if they'll book on that day, but they want exposure too. So we find they typically will work around your schedule. They go to your booking calendar. Oh, that's the only day there's appointments. Wow, I better do this quick before there's no more appointments left.
Right.
We plan it also with the extra half day of planning. That's one of the things that we do. So we have our team or our assistant or whoever is working with us to maybe get the guests for the next month. And so once we record, we plan the next month's recording and we authorize the dates and all of those things out and say, oh, did we seek enough guests for next month? Are we on schedule for that? And so we do that. So it's just really done in what is literally a day and a half then at that moment. And just say, that's it, we're done. We've done our planning and we're always a month ahead. That's how we work. But we're always recording for the month, not the month we're in, but the next month after that.
Do you see podcasters having each other on episodes and bouncing off?
I do. Yeah, I think sometimes that's the I don't know who to ask for as guests, and that happens, and there's a lot of that. But there are also a lot of podcasters, and this is really important to remember. If you've got a lot of real estate shows, those people who are listening are hopping around from multiple shows. So we find that when someone's interested in a genre and they want to learn something, especially in a learning, not an entertaining kind of podcast, they're going to book a bunch of shows and subscribe to a bunch of shows at once. So being on those other shows, bringing your audiences together, it brings your audience to them and their audience to you. That's actually a really good plan. And it doesn't hurt either show. I mean, it's not about
addition by subtraction.
Yeah, it doesn't work like that.
It's like you said, it's co-opetition, I think, right?
There we go. Look at that note-specific word mingling into the podcast stratosphere. We got a question from Nicole.
Yeah, Jamie Harrington asks, is a podcast best done with a guest as opposed to being solo, as you can continue with the podcast even though no one's listening?
That's a good question. So Jamie Harrington out of Hickory, North Carolina, who I've known for about a decade. Good friend. Actually, she's going to be a podcast guest next week of mine on a case study and some things, but that's a great question. So let's repeat the question. Is it good doing it with a guest or doing it individually?
Yes, as opposed to doing it by yourself, not record.
Okay.
Yeah, not live.
You're not doing it live.
Yeah.
Okay. What do you guys see?
Really, I would say try to do both if you can, because it really provides a good variety of content. And people do want to hear from really good guests who have experiences and insights that you may not have as the host. At the same time, they want to know what you think. When you start speaking to them as a podcast host, they get to know you, even though you don't know them as a host, right? They get to know you. And if they're going to listen to you for a long period of time, they need to really believe that they understand who you are and what your point of view is. So I would recommend both. And that also helps you at times when you have a guest that might have to reschedule at the last minute and you're like, oh, I'm not far enough ahead. Now what am I going to do for an episode? Well, you record one for yourself and put it out there. And so I'd recommend both. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think both is what I recommend all the time to people because you have a business purpose for your show. And in that business purpose, you can't always just be the interview. You have to be the expert as well. And so being able to flip between both makes it more successful.
That makes sense. I always kind of think of it as your own radio show. I think it's something like the good kind of news talk shows or the late night shows. Especially one of my favorites is always the old Johnny Carson episodes.
Yeah.
Where he's doing a lot of stuff by himself, but he had Ed McMahon there just to say, yes, yes. You know what I mean? Kind of that aspect, but he bring guests on. And so that's the thing. Now, do you see a time as far as like a length of episodes that does really well?
So this is probably one of the number one questions we get asked. The reality is, we don't subscribe to a particular length of show. I mean, I think
we never watch the clock.
Here's the thing. You have a subject you're going to talk about or a guest you're going to talk to. We say, don't stretch it and make it longer than it really should be. When it's done, end it.
Cut them off if they're boring, you know, that kind of thing.
But at the same time, don't artificially make it short because everybody, the average commute in the country is like 25 minutes. So we don't want to make it longer than 25 minutes.
We discovered that this problem is when we first, because that's what the podcast gurus were saying back in 2015 was 20 minutes was the commute and it should be 20 to 25 minutes maximum. And so we did that. And then we would get emails from people saying they need to be longer. We want more.
We want more.
And so we're like, okay. And so what I also realized, and I should have realized it because I was a heavy podcast listener, I always listen on double speed. So that makes it like 10 minutes long. It's too short then. So if you are commuting, you want to listen to a 40-minute episode in 20 minutes. And so that's really where we switched it up. And we normally, what we do when it's topic-based, it will end up somewhere between 20 to 40 minutes, somewhere in there. And if it's a guest, because we do an intro and an outro section where we're having a post discussion.
Our final thoughts after the interview.
Because of that, the interview might be about 35 minutes or 40 minutes, and then we'll probably take it up to 45 to 50 minutes easily with our discussions.
Your final thought from Jerry Springer, basically.
Yes, exactly. We try to always do that. And then you've got your wrap up and your intros. So sometimes they will be under an hour for sure, but they won't. Typically, we won't go longer than that.
It's just keep it real is the thing. And not just for who you are, I think, as a person, but for the length of content. It's just when the subject feels complete, then it's time to be done.
And that's why we don't like the ads interrupting the interviews or ads interrupting the show. And we don't like the watch the clock. That's why we invented the system for our ad mixing, is because we wanted the flexibility to put it wherever made sense in the flow of the show. Because I don't want to interrupt that. That's my value to the audience. And that's what I care more about is their listening experience than I care about that monetization. The monetization is important to keep your show going and supporting that. But for me, I could find another way to do it. That's why we invented what we did. So
let's talk a little about that. You guys do a lot of, you guys have grown, but you help people launch their podcasts. Let's talk a little about that as well.
Yeah, sure. You know what? Once we did this for ourselves, because we spent easily 6 months researching podcasting, reading dozens of books, watching 50 YouTube videos, listening to a couple dozen podcasts about podcasting.
Well, no, hundreds of episodes on a couple dozen different podcasts.
Right. It took a long time researching it for what was an experiment at the time. And then once we started doing it, realizing this was working for us, we had to build a team, put processes and systems in place so it didn't take over our full-time
because it wasn't our day job.
And so once we did that, and then other people we're associated with in business said, wow, that's great. Could you do that for me? Could you do that for me?
Could you teach a course? And so we actually recorded a course. And we did it. We forced ourselves to do it like a boot camp. So we offered it up for like $97. We did it for 30 days live. And we had, I don't know, a dozen people sign up or something like that. It was nothing. And it didn't really matter to me if one person signed up. I would still do it. Like that was having someone sign up was so we would be committed to show
justification, the accountability.
Yeah, exactly. It was like, we have to show up. We have someone waiting on us. It was just to force us to do it. And so we did it in 30 days and we recorded everything about how to launch a podcast and we put it in an order and we did all of this. And out of the whole thing, only one person, and she's still podcasting today, and I'm so proud of her, and only one person did it all the way through, and basically within 45 days, so within 15 days after, launched her podcast.
Well, what we really learned was...
people don't want to do it.
People doing it themselves, this is not going to help people in business. And so we ended up creating, it became its own company, and it was on the side of our core business for a while. Now it's its own company, its own right, with its own full-time employees, so it's legitimate. But it is definitely a done-for-you service. So we have two main services, a done-for-you podcast launch accelerator program so that you want to get into podcasting, then just sign up and in 4 weeks, boom, you're a podcaster.
A lot less.
It can be as little as 2 weeks. It just depends on a few things, mostly having to do with you,
recording.
Not us, not our team.
Yeah, there's so many episodes that are included in that package.
Yes, there are. It comes with first 3 episodes. We're not just training you. We're really doing it for you. We're going to quiz out of you all the things we need to know. We're going to create your cover art. We're going to find you music. We create original theme music too. We're going to do voiceover artists to introduce you, sort of handing the stage to you. All of the things necessary, and including setting up a podcast page on your website. I mean, there's a laundry list of things.
But we decided
the first 3 episodes.
But we decided to do that as this complete done for you package is because we didn't want people to skip any of the steps because they're actually integral to creating a better system later. And so we didn't want them to be able to choose a la carte or do that or watch the course videos and like skip it. And so I get harassed all the time when I give is that I don't have a DIY program. But the reality is this, I'm like, you're just not going to succeed. So I don't want you to pay the money to do it. But at the same time, I keep feeling bad that we probably should put it out there some way, shape, or form. Maybe we'll just give it away and say, I know you won't do it. I dare you.
Yeah, but then we offer done for you ongoing episode production, which includes whether you record it as video or audio. We produce and syndicate that audio show. We convert that into written blog content for your site. We put it into your site for you. Each episode has its own original episode graphic for social shares. We include the ego bait, and we have an automated guest communication system. So as long as you give us a guest name and email, your guest is going to get an email when it publishes with all the assets.
Because we kept forgetting to notify guests on our own podcast because we record a month ahead of time. We were like, what episode aired this week? Did you notify the guest? Oh my gosh, we forgot. And so we automated it.
So we had to fix that. So Anyway, it's really a complete system to help you market and grow your business. And it's using podcasting or video casting as a tool. Really, that's how we talk about it. It's fundamental baseline marketing, and it will pay such dividends in terms of increasing your website traffic and growing your audience so much faster.
Let's use an example of mine there as far as numbers.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the keyword search aspect of that.
So Google ranks you on multiple different things. So they give your site an overall ranking. So there's 1.4 billion websites or something right now. I forget what the number is.
Yeah.
Because it changes every day. But 1.4 billion websites, and everyone has a ranking between 1 and 1.4 billion, and wherever you rank within that. And so there's that. And then there are keywords, organic keywords, which are keywords that they're basic phrases. Yeah, they're not words. They're
combinations of words. Yeah.
Key combinations of words. And so there's the number of those. And then there's backlinks, which are websites that refer to you or mention you or that you have had an article written about. So any one of those. And backlinks, it's not just the number, but also the value of end up making up that ranking number at the end of the day.
Now, the rank is honestly less important to me as it is having as many backlinks and as many organic keywords that you rank on as possible, because that's how people are going to find you. Those people typing things into Google search or people visiting other websites and then see something that refers to you and brings them to your site. We do this where we make your site the hub of everything about you and your business. So in terms of ranking, I remember, what was it? I think it was September this year or something when you and I met in Anaheim at a conference. And that previous Wednesday, you had an episode. I don't even remember what the subject of the episode was, but mentioned in that episode was a company called TapeTex. And that was not the point of the episode. It was just a company mentioned. Well, within 3 days, by that Saturday after, when this episode published on a Wednesday, your post for that episode was ranking on the first page of Google search when somebody typed in TapeTex. That was a fantastic example of how quickly Google will go through a blog post related to your podcast, index you, rank you on a keyword, and then somebody who wasn't even looking for you, who was looking up something about this other company, finds a blog post and learns about you, your company, your podcast. That is gold. Because that you're just casting a much wider net on the internet.
And you can do the same thing and outrank. Like we found ourselves outranking Fast Company. And how do you outrank a major publication who should have a way more clout, way more power than you? But it happens if you are an expert in a particular area. And so we outranked Fast Company writing about Super Bowl tech because I guess it was, what year was it? 2016,
it's a couple of years
maybe?
ago.
A couple of years ago, there was a 3D printed cast in one of the Super Bowl players. We just did an episode about it. And
yeah, because he got injured in the NFC Championship game and thought, he won't play in the Super Bowl. Well, they made him a 3D printed cast. The NFL approved it. He was able to play. So we do this with this little podcast, not even a year old yet. And we do this episode on it. And then within a week and a half, we were ranking on the first page of Google above Fast Company, was it?
Yeah.
For 3D printed Super Bowl something. I don't know what the keyword was, but it was amazing. Or
it was Super Bowl tech or something.
Yeah. Something, I don't know. But
that was the name of the episode. But it was like Super Bowl tech or something like that. And it was a whole article that Fast Company had written on the tech of Super Bowl, which did include 3D printing, but ours outranked it. So you can do that.
Yeah, here's the lesson. It doesn't matter. Google doesn't discriminate. Google does not care if you're a big company or a startup or an individual. It's all about relevance, and they make their own rules as to what's relevant, and you can't buy your way out of it. All you can do is buy a paid ad and rank at the top of the page for a sponsored ad. Everything else below the sponsored ads,
organic.
It's all organic, and you can compete. And here's another piece of information your audience might find interesting. Every single day, a quarter of the search terms entered in Google's search bar, Google has never seen before.
They don't know the words. Now, some of it is misspelling.
Yeah, some of it might be misspelling or it might be bad grammar. It doesn't matter, but it's what actual people are typing into Google's search bar. And so Google has to send people who search on those things somewhere, and they're going to find the most relevant thing. So that's why there's always new keyword phrases being added to the database and being indexed, and your old posts will continue to rank on new ones, and your new posts can rank on them very quickly. But you've got to create content in order to have that happen.
So that's where we see your power growing.
Yeah.
Your power is growing in a bigger real estate bubble because the associated words, it's not just notes. Mm-hmm. And so see that you've got a lot more thousands of keywords that you're going to continue to grow on. And that's really when your power of authority starts to grow and grow.
Well, that was also, too, it's because that's led to some of the sponsors, because we've ranked high for their sponsors. And they're like, they were like, huh? Like, you guys can either work with me or you can work against me a little bit here. I'm still going to win. Like, we want to be on the winning side.
Yeah, you do. And you can mine that. You can look up the keywords that you're starting to rank on, and you can look at all the relevant keywords associated with those. And there are free tools on the internet for how to look that up. And then you can rank on keywords that are paying 10, 20, 30. I think we even saw some that you're ranking them paying $50 pay per click. That means somebody goes from a Google search to your website and ends up clicking on a affiliate link or an ad or something that Google is paying that amount pay per click on. They click on it. They don't even have to buy. They click on it. You make that money if you do the right things and you set up properly.
Pay-per-click in general, that's not always as common. And so, I'd say the majority of websites that we see that are kind of moderately sized but still taking ads generally do around $1,000 a month, which is not bad. It can support the maintenance of your site, right? But the podcast ads can do a lot more money. And so we sometimes have done $6,500, $3,600 in a month. We're not really active in trying to sell ads on our podcast.
It's not our primary,
income
generator.
So, but we do it. Like, we just got invited to South by Southwest, and we can't wait to come. And we're going to have sponsor, because why shouldn't we pay for our expenses? And it's such a high placement and high value for them because it's live, as well as then the podcast will be held and live on beyond it. And so there's no reason not to get a sponsor for something like that. And you don't have to give it away.
Should we sponsor some live t-shirts you guys could wear on stage?
Awesome. That's a good idea. Great idea. But that's the thing where we've automated all these systems to market and grow your business using a podcast. And the next evolution of this business is about monetization through advertising and sponsors. And that's why we did create this ad insertion system.
I want to be really careful. It's not all about ads.
Right.
We use ad as a really broad term. It's any kind of promotion. So you can promote your book. You can promote your next course. You can promote your event. You can promote your partners. You can promote a charity. But putting that in there, your audience wants to give back to you. That's what we found. They want to give you credit for the value you're providing. And if you give them some small way that is a match for them, they're happy to do that. Whether it's just click through and download something, or go on and check somebody's website out, or make a donation to a great charity that you support. They want to give back to you. And we've seen things like 37, 40% conversion rates on any kind of call to action.
Yeah.
And so especially when you haven't inundated them with irrelevant ads, right? Like, that's a big deal. They have to be relevant to your show or relevant to you as the host. And that matters to your audience.
I've seen that already. Even simply, we did the whole thing like, hey, pop sockets.
Love those.
That podcast that Nicole designed here in the office. It's like, well, listen, hey, if you go listen and leave a review, shoot us your address. We'll send you a pop socket. And there's like 4 people left reviews already in just the last 24 hours, which is kind of funny. I never had a pop socket until somebody at a digital marketing convention talked about it. I was like, let's try that. And sure enough, it's paying off. So it's fun.
I'm sure you're going to find that that's quite successul. I need to go review it so I can get mine.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, please do. I'd be glad to send you a pop socket, maybe a t-shirt. Who knows?
Who knows?
But that is the cool thing, is there's so many options to market and grow your business doing this. It all starts with the content and creating it the way you're creating it and the way we're doing it with podcasting. It's so much fun and so easy.
I think this is the most fun we've ever had in our business. It's just a lot more active, and it got us really out more. We had been doing so much closed-in design and client work, and it's just expansive. Yeah.
That was the whole goal. And, Tom and I talked about this back a while back. It's like, listen, we've done a lot of stuff for us, and we already were doing webinars and providing a lot of great content. And we've done the Facebook Lives just as kind of a little daily touch point with our audience, how to touch daily with our audience. And then now that we do this almost Monday through Friday, it's one of our big things that we do, unless I'm traveling or we have something else going on. And so it's like the first bit of marketing piece that we do every day that leads to stuff going long term. We get the videos, 4 days from now, it'll pop up on iTunes, but in the next 12 hours, Nicole will have it up on Vimeo and YouTube. But it leads to long-term saturation across the different platforms, and it's just a great way to do it. A little recap here. I think the biggest thing you said was just doing it. It's easier than most people make it out to be. Doing a mixture of content and maybe guests, like 50 case studies or guests, right?
Yes.
And then do it at least probably twice a week at a minimum.
It's recommended in the first 60 days, as many as you can. When we started our first podcast, we did 5 days a week, honestly, for quite a long time to build that content quickly. But not everybody wants to do that or has time. I'd say twice a week is very manageable, but get the support you need. Don't try to bite off everything yourself.
Amen. How can our listeners and watchers get a hold of you guys if they're wanting to start their own podcast?
You can come to Brandcasting. Now make sure that's brand, not broad. Brandcastingu.com. Our podcast is called Feed Your Brand. And we also have our Facebook page, Feed Your Brand, that you may want to go and subscribe to as well to see all sorts of notifications, not only about our show, but all the shows we produce. We promote all of our clients on Facebook as well.
You guys definitely do.
Brandcastingu.com, Feed Your Brand. We'd love to hear from you and help you out, helping you grow and market your business. Absolutely. It's so much fun.
It is fun. It's definitely a win-win across the board. Tom, Tracy, thank you so much for taking your time on a busy day. I know you're busy just like we are, and you got a house full of people coming in for the holidays, but thank you.
We do.
Yeah, exactly.
Lots of kids.
Exactly. If I don't talk to you, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and cheers to 2018. Right, everybody?
Yay!
Absolutely. Merry Christmas,
Thanks
Happy
so
New
much.
Year, and thank you for having us. This was a ball.
Yeah.
Thanks for being a guest, guys. So we'll see you guys later.
Okay. Bye.
Everybody. All right, everybody. Hey, that wraps up for the show episode. Like I said, if you're really interested in starting a podcast, pick up the phone, drop them an email, check out their website. These guys are la creme de la creme and are doing some amazing things. And listen, yeah, I have a lot of content, but I started years ago, one video, one piece of content. And in today's society, it's a whole lot easier to get the word out what you're doing. And honestly, if you're not doing some sort of video or some sort of broadcasting something, you're behind the eight ball. So doing a little bit extra than the next guy goes exponentially a whole lot further. So with that, I'm going to leave you guys be. You guys go out and have an amazing day. Go make it happen, and we'll see you all at the top, everybody. Bye.